Okay, this is an episode of, I guess you could call it addictions. Primarily to handle understanding, I guess, the addiction population that has increased quite a bit. Been affected by it, just living in cities, and also there's always someone that has lost family member to an addiction of some sort. So what I'm going to do is kind of identify who they are so that you get the stigma off. Who they are high school stars who had either limb loss or heart transplants that they weren't supposed to get because they were going to be sent home to die. They were, chemists, PhD chemists, psychologists, and doctors and nurses. These are, not your typical identifiable people that end up, in that field and addicted to anything. But those are the ones that you see on the streets ruined. Now I'm going to teach you about them. The two high school students, one of them lost a limb on a motorcycle accident. He was playing around with his friends. They found their first bottle of liquor. And underage, of course. And they did what underage kids do and experimented on drinking with their friends that they trusted. And they thought it was a good idea to get on a bike, a two-wheel motorcycle, and just kind of fly around, the grassy areas between lands, okay? And they also thought that it would be a good idea, even though boys and men don't get their full genetics that say, oh, this might not be a good thing to do because it might be a danger or risk to my, life. They don't get all those brain cells until 26 to 28, according to some studies. So they fall right into the category of not recognizing the signs of alcohol and motorcrafts, actually getting them into some trouble that they never expected. They're just kids having fun. We're no better or less or better or worse, or, we've all had our moments in our adolescence where we, had risky behavior thinking it was going to be fun, and it ended up not. So, what I'm trying to tell you are these are pure athletes. Like, they were, devoted every day to working out and thought they were, impervious to having anything bad happen to them because they were working out every day and getting strong. And, it was pitch dark out, 3:30 in the morning, of course, little liquor inside, and the driver of the motorcycle had his friend on the back, and his friend's head was hanging off, and he saw a wire. Usually the wires have like a plastic over them, but that particular one didn't have it, and they were just encouraging each other to go faster, 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 and it wasn't in time enough for his friend to move his head back, and he knew they were so fast that he was going to have a head injury, so he pushed his arm back and lost it completely. He lost his arm trying to save his friend. That was one thing. Their friendship broke because the kid freaked out. He'd never drank before, and most adults can't handle limb loss, let alone an adolescent witnessing it. So he took off because he was afraid he was going to get in trouble. And he ran home, and I don't know what happened. But their friendship broke off at that point. They came together when he was on his deathbed. The one who got away and left his friend there, he actually had a heart transplant. In my opinion, he had a heart transplant because his heart was so broken over all this. I know that sounds strange, but we take in our injuries and losses and guilt in different ways. And, he was just a kid, so he had a heart injury. So what they did was they literally sent him home after a time and said, we're sending you home to die, so we're going to give you lots of drugs so you won't have any pain. And so that's how, the morphine and the opiates became an addiction because he thought he was going to die soon. And what happened was he ended up getting a heart. He got the beeper and it went off and he's like, what? And he goes, but I'm high. So they said, we can't risk it. We got to get you in here now. This is something time constraint. You're going to have a transplant right now. So they med-flighted him over into, get a transplant. And it worked successfully, but he had a megawatt of an addiction to handle now. So here you got two buddies. They finally met up. One's addicted to morphine because of the limb loss, pain killing, and the phantom pain and the pain and suffering of losing a friend and all that stuff. And of course, they feel bad for these kids, so they gave them lots of meds back in the day to help the pain, not thinking that it would do anything but help them. And so that's what brought them to the streets. Because when they cut off the medicine and said, you should be fine now, and they're like, no, we're not. The reason for that was GABA, acetylcholine, dopamine, and serotonin, the things that make you content in life, that are naturally producing in the brain and your body, they actually were gone. And so when you stop it, it takes 2 to 4 weeks to actually feel normal again without grief and pain from every orifice and every cell and every pore of every body, nerve ending. So it's almost impossible. A lot of people say, why do people, they sell their family stuff? Why do they, betray their family like that and the money and all that stuff? They abandon the kids because I'm going to tell you why. If you can't hold up a glass of water, right, half full for 24 hours, and you have to put it down because you're in so much pain and suffering and need hospitalization by half time of that 24 hours, putting down that glass, okay, is what it's like for them. You have to, because you're in so much pain and suffering so long, too long. And that's what people don't understand is that acetylcholine, that dopamine, that serotonin, and GABA is a painkiller. Of living without it is like suffering hell. And you can't even handle 24 hours. How are they supposed to handle 4 weeks of it? So, and it's physical like that. They're physically in pain. And it's nonstop. If you understand Chinese torture, like the old days where they used to put people in their prisons underwater and let it drip. And they would literally go insane and die, or at least be tortured. It's because, that same concept will drive you insane. That pain will drive you insane. So how are you going to get through that 4 weeks? You need unconditional love and support from family and friends because you're going to flip out. And you're not going to act right. And you're going to fight to get out to go get some drugs. And it's going to take a lot of love to put that down and distractions and help through that pain. So, but you can do it. It's just going to be a constant battle, and that's okay. If the people around you aren't supportive enough, then you need to find some, you know, and sometimes that's found in a rehab, you know, where it gives you a little head start. So, you know, that's why it's not because they're quote unquote titled as losers. No, the losers are not existent in this world. You know, they're really not. If you stepped into their feet, into their shoes, and walked a mile in their shoes to understand, everybody would be more compassionate, more understanding, and more loving about the things that they don't understand. You know, and people are getting smarter now, so that might help. But we need to be supportive of these groups, even though we know there's trouble ahead. You at least can understand why, and that they're actually heroes if they do quit. You know, and the ones that can't, you know, we need to help support them and get, you know, funding to bring them into play, into, you know, being recovered. Let's see. And let's see some other drug addicts. There was a psychologist, a nurse who actually had ovarian cancer when she was little. You know, she was one of the only ones to recover from ovarian cancer and survive. Okay? And she was literally a scientific study, you know, because of that. But what they did was, for the pain of chemo and all that stuff, and the pain and suffering she had to go through, and they thought she was going to die, they just wanted to keep her comfortable. They drugged her up a lot. So she read a lot of, she used to, I know this is bad, back in the day they didn't like really keep folders private, and they'd leave them out at the nurse's dock, and she would sneak in there, and she would read all the files of all the patients, and that's what got her to studying nursing and went to nursing school. And that addiction never left. You know, it never left. So she had full access back in the day. They didn't know that people were going to be robbing, you know, the drug cabinets, you know. And even if they did, they thought, you know, they were looking through their glasses saying, I don't do it. You know, obviously there was a miscount or a misassignment or, you know, misplacement, or somebody threw it in the trash when it was full, right? Because everybody thought they were looking through integrity eyes. But what they didn't understand was, you know, the particular drug addiction. So she came clean, and she said she had a drug problem, and they helped her at the hospital. And everything was great for years to come. But everybody thinks that they've got it in the bag. And then she had gone to China, and, you know, with her business, you know, but she was alone without her husband. She got lonely at night and went to the markets, and she found the drugstore to get some aspirin for a headache. And what she found was Percocets, bought over the counter by the 2000s. And she thought, over the counter? I don't even have to get a prescription. So she went and thought about it, and she says, I'm going to get some just in case I'm ever in pain. And of course, she said, I might try one and get rid of this headache, end the pain of being lonely in a foreign country, because it is culture shock. You can't speak it to anybody because you don't know the language. You're not prepared for how to get around. It's very stressful and lonely. So that's what she did. And full-blown addiction later, she ended up having to work through those things all over again from day one. You know, because again, the production of GABA, acetylcholine, serotonin, and dopamine stopped production once she dumped Percocets by the load into her brain, you know. A lot of people don't realize how quick it is and what the actual problem is, but that's it. It takes 2 to 4 weeks of pure, I hate to say it, emotionally outbursting. And that's usually what triggers people to cause more problems for themselves. And then they end up having to go and get some help for that. Sometimes they can get in some serious trouble, family fights, divisions, and they just go back to it because 2 to 4 weeks is difficult time to have perfection and have that much support. So unless you understand what's going on physically and how long the battle is, it's forever. But the first 2 to 4 weeks is the hardest. And it takes 21 days to change a habit, to start to change a habit. But upkeep is a long lifetime of devotion, of knowing that weakness. So the psychologist wound up having a drug problem back in the day of her youth, and then she went to college, straightened out her life, gave up drugs, and then she was a psychologist, and she had court-ordered people come in for drug problems. One day she had a tough time, and they worked something out. So, there you go. So somebody was able to get drugs, and she was able to provide, the use of them. So, and then a chemist who lost her children and, went all the way to PhD. And what she did was she found out how to make them. Just as a joke. But then she started doing them. Just as a joke. And when you're a chemist and you know how to make them, and then you become addicted to them and you can't quit because that 2 to 4 week period without GABA, acetylcholine, codeine, and serotonin production to make that pain not last, you got yourself a big problem. So she ended up getting in some trouble trying to get through it, got busted, got controlled, and lost her kids and fought for them back, got a house, and had to rebuild her life from PhD career, which was now blown and ground zero. She would be lucky if she could waitress, so the people in the streets that you recognize, they're your moms, they're your dads, they're your aunts, your uncles, your cousins. Don't think of them as these rare opportunities. No, they're hiding it because they can put on a good front in their suffering. Okay? What you're seeing is the reality of what happens to them, on the streets. So don't keep judging like, I would never. Try having back pains from a car accident and having to take opiates for years to handle the pain. And that doesn't even seem to do the trick. And then try going off of them. Permanent lack of sometimes the GABA, the acetylcholine, the serotonin and dopamine never come back after years of use. They never produce because the body's so used to not producing them. Manufacturing them stops after long-term use. So now you have a permanent suffering person who needs, in order to survive, some kind of painkiller to replace the lack of production of GABA, acetylcholine, serotonin, and dopamine to make you even feel normal or content. So this is just really, are the doctors at blame? No, they're trying to help, their job is to serve people, do their best to keep them comfortable during excruciating pain and suffering. So it's really nobody's fault. It's just, understanding that most people have problems with this. It's only the lucky ones that actually get through without. Now, I want to teach you that they do have a cure for drug addictions. And they found a study of Vietnam vets. They all came home, with opiate, heroin, marijuana, drinking, amphetamines, acid, you name it, all kinds of addictions to all of them or whatever. in droves. Now, some people ended up worse in the streets. Other people ended up quitting cold turkey, okay? Because the ones in the streets kept doing them, okay? They couldn't hack it. And that, acetylcholine, GABA, dopamine and serotonin are the reasons, okay? But it was more than that. So what was the difference? They did a study, and I believe it was Harvard University. Correct me if I'm wrong, because somebody told me word of mouth, and I have yet to find this study. And that study found that the difference between the two versions of the same Vietnam vet experience of addictions coming back from Vietnam were that one group that had unconditional love and support from family and friends and acquaintances and businesses, those people got through those 4 weeks and maintained dropping cold turkey, all those pain meds, okay? Whereas the other ones had dysfunctional homes, which made it worse. They just did not have the support systems of unconditional love. That meant when they screwed up, they paid for it. Whereas the people that were loving and loved them and unconditionally with friends and family pulled together to contain their issue and help them get through it, of withdrawals, of freaking out, of having PTSD, complex PTSD. And that is very difficult to have that perfect blend, okay? So that is the reason. And those are the people that you're seeing out on the streets, okay? Plus probably more stupid kids, like, just experimenting and got caught up in it. Didn't understand what was happening to them with the GABA, the acetylcholine, and dopamine and serotonin loss. And 2 to 4 weeks. A lot of people don't know that. So they get to give themselves credit if they ever get through it. They are the heroes of, of this battle, okay? And not to put themselves down when they can't hack it. Instead, look for the right help. If you're not banging on the right door, you got to keep banging until you find the right help for you. There are medical coverages you can get. You can go over to the DTA office, Department of Transitional Assistance, and get some medical coverage. Tell them you have a problem and you want to be in a rehab. If you don't have family and friends to support you through that time, and it will be rough. And it's no picnic after, too, because you're always going to have triggers in life. You're going to always know that you're an addict. We all are. Some people might bounce back better because of the unconditional love and support, And I'm not saying I'm an addict. I actually don't touch anything like that stuff. But I did see a problem. And talking to enough people, I started realizing my judgment was shallow, So I needed to really understand it because it was growing. And it was starting to reach daughters and uncles and aunts throughout all of society. And I'm like, wait a minute. I have this whole thing wrong, don't I? So I started finding out who they were, what happened. And then I researched the chemistry of it and what was happening to the physiology effects of people and what they were missing in the studies. And then finally, through word of mouth, I found out, the love and unconditional support from friends, family, and businesses that knew Vietnam was rough, And the drugs and addictions and all that stuff, it helped them so much to be busy with all that stuff and all those people. Some people couldn't do it because they didn't have that kind of unconditional love. It was conditional. You can't flip out. You can't have PTSD. You can't have a drug addiction. Get out, because maybe boundaries were crossed. I don't know. But, we need to support as many people as we can because they are our brothers. They are our sisters. They are our our family under the umbrella of creation, you know? So, in a perfect world, I guess. But that's the summary on that. So, I learned not to judge, instead to understand and see the heroes suffering, you know? And I wish them all well and hope that everybody takes this update seriously and incorporates it into understanding in the people they employ and not be so judgmental, and maybe helping them in medical coverage or leaning toward what's actually helping. Spread word of mouth about those 4 chemicals and how long it takes, 2 to 4 weeks, and that they're going to need a lot of help, you know? So, and that's just the beginning of the battle. Just like life, though. I mean, you got to understand, life isn't going to be easy. You know, life is full of battles that we all have to engage in. You know, you think you're going to get away scot-free, win $1 million and sit on your butt every day. Oh, it's going to come at you in one way or another, you know? It's going to come back. So you just have to realize, suck it up, buttercup. Going without, masking pain sometimes and enduring it. Not all the time, with excruciating pains, but trying to suck it up and take the pain sometimes helps you in the long run get stronger of it, helps you tolerate life. And if you want, you can give yourself something really, truly hard to cry about. If you have life problems, and go jog 7 miles if you can, or go to the gym if you're in a wheelchair and you can't. Go to the gym anyway and do, touch your toes in your wheelchair, and try have someone hold the handles on the back so you don't roll over. Just do it every day, So, good luck and be well.